Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for July the 1st. And a boring, if not predictable, into June right here. We had a little bit of activity when you think about it. For the month, we started up, had our biggest retrace to a 50% level before moving back up. Of course, that 50% level wasn't much given the constriction here. We have the range of the Fibonacci or Morganacci lines, as we refer to them, simply because it's different than taking the strongest low and the highest high and then doing it from there. We do it as it is more relevant to market action. Of course, the MBI clearly had magenta running well in advance, and it's not changed at all. And of course, the NASDAQ had been the leader on this setup, and it proved no less than that. Look at that green DSC. You don't see that very often. It's so far above, with cyan well under red and not having changed. The only weakness taking place is the general potential here of steel dipping below cyan, and that's just starting. But just from what it takes from a daily standpoint, you would see days in advance, a deterioration before things start to really break down. And of course, always look at those ABMs. And in this case, for the NASDAQ, 14,386. So makes it easy from that gauge. From a gold standpoint, we had the magenta rising above and finally caught a little bit of action, but not before completing its move to the 0% with the white MBI riding over for quite some time there. So that doesn't mean that this bull move is going to last very long. It's possible we get the orange below, but negative 26 in the shakeout, it's got more work to do. So even if it pops, it's likely to come back. And likewise here, same thing, minus 21 from a shakeout on euro. So euro still can't catch a bid. And of course, that's just because it's a disaster. This whole eurozone. Finally, we just got to take masks off, but now then everyone's being terrified of the Delta variant, which, if you look at the numbers from India, from actual science, there were fewer fatalities percentage-wise, so not really going to be a factor, given the fact that most people are going to have the same antibodies, and you're going to end up with the same situation as we've already had, and most people are already immune to it. And even with the variant, very few even noticing that they either got it or never did get it. So it's much to do about nothing, but a good opportunity for politicians to make noise. And of course, here we had Bitcoin popping up here with that white. We talked about it, moved to a 0, and it did just that. And we made a little bit of a buy signal right there at that key 34K. And from an intraday standpoint, again, weak. From a daily standpoint, at least as far as range, because we're not getting much activity because things have been pretty benign. But I think this is going to probably start to change now that we've had this major option rollover in that, because now it's going to come clear that either stimulus is going to continue or we're going to see rising inflation, in which case the market's going to have to react to that. And you'll just see broader swings. It doesn't mean the market's going to move higher. It just means that we might get bigger ranges as there's rotation from various asset classes back and forth, and that's not to be surprising given where we're at elevation-wise anyway. And most of this increase is just simply because of devaluation expectation. Now, should that expectation change, well, that could cause all sorts of rebalancing that we wouldn't want to talk about. But when we're looking at this intraday, actually, even if we put up a 50K chart, you can see, clearly, magenta well over yellow in this particular case, so not looking at anything to the negative side. So it's one of those, just continue to ride along with it, no complaints. Now that everything's situated with the redo of indicators and stuff like that, I will be producing a few more of the alterations and changes that I was working on before I had my catastrophe, and we had to recover from that. You'll also notice in the ratio hawk, reduced the number of dots simply because a lot of it's been incorporated into our general readings, but once it's converted overall, I'll have several more setups within that one, and more likely than not, they'll just be put into this PNT2A. So that'll make it easy. Don't have to really think about it or do anything special. As always, though, I will be available on Skype chat, trade well, and we'll certainly go over some of these setups as they develop. we'll talk again later. I did want to take a moment or two to go over some of the alterations. So if you click the MBI indicator, in this case in style, what I like to do is click the second weighting. That gives it a little bit more color. If you go back to the first one, sometimes it can be rather thin. From an input standpoint, relatively basic. You have all the line colors. The orange will show up as that YWX, which means it's basically just the averaging of the yellow line to smooth out for variance, which makes it sometimes convenient. And that's what you'll see for the ratio Hawk dots as a setup that involves that magenta crossing below, that smooth version of the orange. The trig line, which is that 19 value line, placed on there. If you're going to put a 1 there, it will show up. Without that, it won't. You can adjust the value of it. 33 level up here can also be turned on and off, and you can adjust that value. And as well, the midline, which would be that 25, you can just turn it off as desired. And then overbought, oversold, which would be, I have it 40 right here, and the 10 if you wanted to move it to 0 or 10. Just to have a secondary one in there. In fact, if I change that right now to 0, and on the other lines, we're going to add in the blue cross and the dark green, just so you can see what all that looks like when it flips back into the indicator. And there it is with the magic. So boom, it shows up as cyan at the 19 level, and then also up here above. And then I switched the 40 number down to a 0 line, which shows up down there, and you can see them popping up on the sides for it. So that takes care of that one, and nothing you have to do with the deal campaign 2A. It's going to have everything already built into it. From the green candles to the white MBIs. May have an adjustment where you don't get multiples of the MBI, because the reason I had it exposed where it would show more than one of them was simply because I was testing to see which was the best capture point. So now that that's sort of been finalized in many circumstances, then it won't be necessary to have more than just one of the green, one of the white candles show up and then flip to a green from there. So we'll take care of it that way. That was about it as far as that goes, and everything else pretty much straightforward. So if that helps.